everyone. This is Kristen Vincent, Chair of the Westborough School Committee. Today is Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021. This meeting of the Westborough School Committee is called to order. Please stand if you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Republic
for which it stands,
one nation,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Anyone attending the school committee meeting tonight is welcome to wear a mask, and unvaccinated individuals are strongly advised to wear masks. I'd like to notify everyone in the room with us tonight that this meeting is being recorded by Westborough TV. School committee meetings are available for remote viewing or listening on Westborough TV's government channels, Verizon 28 and Charter 192, and online on the Westborough TV YouTube channel. A recording of this meeting will be posted on the Westborough YouTube channel in the next day or so. And thank you to Westborough TV, as always, for covering the broadcast tonight. We have with us tonight Superintendent Amber Bach and Assistant Superintendent Dr. Daniel Mayer, Director of Finance and Administration David Gordon, Vice Chair of the Westborough School Committee Steve Durrett, School Committee members Sarah Dulé, Lisa Edinburgh, and Raghu Nandan, our Student Representative Andrew Chen, our Recording Secretary Jen Benton is on the way, and we have staff from Westborough TV handling the broadcast and recording of this meeting. Our agenda for this meeting is as follows. We'll have an approval of minutes from September 8th regular session. We'll have a superintendent's report, assistant superintendent's report, and a director of finance and administration's report. We'll have school committee member reports, building project updates, citizens' requests. Then we will do an annual approval of an agreement with the school resource officer. We will review capital projects. We'll have an update on the Board of Health meeting that occurred last night. We will do an update on snow days and alternative learning days and learn what those are going to look like this year. We will review some MASC resolutions in preparation for the annual meeting in November. We will have a discussion of our upcoming school committee retreat and look at our goals that we set last year, and then we will adjourn. We have no executive session tonight. So we will begin with an approval of minutes. We will approve the minutes from September 8th regular session.
I move the motion to approve the minutes from September.
Thank you, Raghu. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Sarah. Any discussion on the minutes? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That is 5-0. The minutes are approved. So welcome, Superintendent Bach. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. So good to see everybody tonight. All right, so I have a couple focused updates to provide. One, our open houses are moving along successfully. It feels really good to see parents back in buildings to get updates on curriculum and start to the school year. And I know that I want to thank people for the flexibility in sending one parent per student. I know that it's usually an enjoyable opportunity for parents and families to connect and socialize. And, you know, a little of that has been impacted by the sense that we downsized the opportunity for people to come in family groups and to be able to visit. But I appreciate that, and I think that people feel the evenings have been successful. Tonight, Gibbons is having their second night. I was there last night, and we have Thursday will be the 3 elementary schools. That overlaps with our budget summit, but there's always, again, we're back into the part of our life where there's multiple things going on every night. One other update, I just wanted to inform you that we've updated some of our custodial staffing to make an adjustment to the leadership structure at the 3 elementary schools where they've continued to pick up a lot of work and leadership. We have head custodians at our 3 schools, but not at the 3 elementary schools. So we just shifted working with them to a better parity so that we will be providing an opportunity to add 3 head custodians at the 3 elementary schools, which we think will provide a more cohesive leadership leadership structure and allow the principals to have an anchor person to interact with, as well as the buildings and grounds leadership. So the conversations for that have happened, the postings will be done, and then I'll forward you language for signature after they're able to complete that. So again, I think an example of kind of responsive leadership where the team looking at what's best for keeping things running smoothly and acknowledging work and support we get, knowing that we have people kind of playing those roles at those building levels, we thought we wanted to make that appropriate adjustment. So we have so many initiatives that we're always kind of working to report on. We'll maintain those, giving you highlights of important initiatives that are happening across district. And of course, you hear from those from Andrew as well, and many of you highlight those. This year, Daniel and I will try to maintain emphasizing both our DEI and our SEL themes to you so that you hear about them more consistently. Because I think that one of the things we learned during COVID, positive outcomes of COVID learnings, was that the consistency of reporting on a COVID update every week let people know that they were going to hear about that, that whenever we had a meeting, there was going to be a tidbit on that, and there was a standing minute around that. And so similarly, I think people will get a better continuity if they do tune in to the types of projects going on across districts when we can give you kind of a stranded theme update. So of the range of really full-blown initiatives around literacy and inclusive practices and all the things that will be in the strategic plan, we've lifted out a focus for us to provide a steady update for you of a snapshot on DEI and SEL initiatives. So the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives remain important and ongoing work, as well as the social emotional learning. So I would select 2 that I'll provide for you tonight, and then Daniel will do 2, and we'll keep a running document where, the faculty are giving us things, and at some point I can share that to you, because there's probably 10 on the list right now, and I'm selecting 2, or we would just be here kind of all night. And as much as we enjoy being together, I know that you wouldn't want that. So tonight, one of the updates I wanted to emphasize was that around our DEI work, that we've called for a DEI team, which is a district-wide initiative team, where we're inviting voices of diverse voices around diversity, equity, and inclusion work to come together and serve as a focus group, kind of a feedback and sounding board to make sure that we have diverse voices from all across the district giving us different lenses of feedback on all of the initiative work that we have underway. And so that went out yesterday as an open invitation with a Google survey form for faculty to register their interest, and we put it out as an open-ended request in terms of numbers, and we'll see how many people we get. Leadership will come together, and then we can formulate a working group. I think it complements other diversity and equity groups that are formed at different building levels. The high school has an equity committee, representation of different stakeholders, and a gender equity social inclusion committee of staff and students, which will be restarting this year. So there's layers and tiers of work. This is a kind of bringing together from across all of the buildings a representation that can give voices to Daniel and I and David on the committee to really listen to more perspectives. So I'm excited about that work. So that's one update around DEI that I wanted to present. And the other is that we're very excited to be seeking an in-depth relationship with a consultant to do diversity and equity work with us, in-house professional development and growth for our leadership team, and then pushed out over time to our building levels. We looked at several consultants and people we were interested in, and actually on Friday, I think Daniel and David, I have a conflict in terms of the meeting. They're going to have a conversation with a consultant that we're very interested in engaging. And David, her name, Liza, I'm going to mess up her last name, is actually a consultant that's been in the field of diversity and inclusion work for several years. And you remember when we saw the movie I Am Not a Racist, Am I? She was one of the counselors in the group. And I remember really liking her. And so when I saw her profile and we were looking at her work, she's been doing a lot of robust, vibrant work, inclusive of that movie, now 10 years old. And so we're very hopeful to be engaged, someone at that high level of thinking and work. And so we'll report back to you on that. If that isn't able to come to fruition, we would be looking at one or two other people that we found really engaging. So I think those are important kind of next steps in the layers of work. And when Daniel does, that's my update, and then I would turn it over to Daniel. I know he has a couple things he'll highlight around social emotional learning and any other updates he has to provide.
Yeah, good evening. Quick update just on terms of, I know MCAS was in the news this week, and we will have a formal report for you at the next committee meeting on that. So we got the data at the same time that the state released it publicly, and so we'll talk about it at the next meeting. And we're going to get, by mid-October, I think parents should expect to get their student reports. So we don't have them yet in hand. They're going to still be a week or so before we get them, and then we have to put them in envelopes and mail them. As far as social emotional learning, yeah, there are a couple of updates of things that are happening that I know you'd be interested in. I'm going to put up on the screen here for you to see. Some of you may know of John Crocker's work. He is a leader in Massachusetts of the School Mental Health Consortium, of which we're now a member group, and he's the founder and director of it. And he has been working with our faculty for the last year. He had several different workshops he put on over a series of months, talking about issues of how to best service and set up your structures to service kids who are in crisis. He is also coming in next week to work with the entire leadership team and our coordinators. There'll be a group of close to 30 that are working with him next Wednesday morning. So we're looking forward to having that concentrated time with them, and we'll be continuing work with them throughout the year with our faculty. We also, I think you know that we have a curriculum that we adopted. It was, the original adoption was 2 years ago. We started piloting it, and then last year, in the midst of COVID, the Second Step program is our new K through 6. It's a scripted, very well thought out, highly rated program on social emotional learning put out by Second Step, and teachers have curriculum to help them engage with the students and have scenarios that they work through having to do with reflecting on their own, needs and ways of speaking up when they have issues that are weighing on them, but also how to communicate effectively with others when they're, when they may be in feeling depressed or anxious, or, it's basically, the purpose of it is to help kids have the skills so they don't get to the point of really having crises. The teachers very much have found this program to be very powerful. Mill Pond has a program they're calling, Amber, remind me, it's the Mill Pond, it's Pond Time? Is
Pond Time, they call it Pond Time, yeah.
Is the equivalent of Second Step, and I'm sure that Peter is sending out, Mr. Gelnitz is sending out some notification to parents so they know what Pond Time means, but it's small groups of students getting together with the entire faculty and support staff working with small groups of students on this curriculum. And the K-3 schools are also using the curriculum. In fact, the pre-K is also using it, so it goes down to pre-K.
Yeah.
So that's my update.
Yeah, can I have a question? Why is it only K through 6? Most kids...
It isn't actually. That I was just highlighting that. So that's a good question. So there's a different program that we're using. It's called the Trails program, which is, I was going to say University of Michigan, but is it University of Michigan?
I think so, yeah.
It might be, but it's a program that's geared at the secondary level. Second Step does go up through middle school, but when looking at Second Step First Trails, the preference is to use the Trails program. So that's a new program. So K-6 was out ahead in terms of piloting training using that program for the last 2 years. We were looking at the Crew initiative, you may remember. We've talked about Crew. Crew still exists in the middle school, but Crew doesn't have as much of a sort of
Targeted, selective, right?
curriculum
Sequential.
that's laid out like Trails does. So you can use the Crew structure, but then you have more guidance for the faculty in terms of activities to do with the kids with Trails. And so we're going to start rolling using Trails. We've already started at the high school this past week, and middle school and high school will be using Trails throughout the year.
Starting this year?
Yeah, I just was saving it for another meeting. I just didn't want to give you everything all at once.
We appreciate that you said that, because again, I think that otherwise people will think, what about high school? But I did send you and forward you from Mr. Callahan the very targeted example of one of the 12 lessons of integrated work that they're doing, which is again explicit, time set aside, SEL-based lessons that are done by all faculty in classrooms with kind of cohesive goals and very targeted discussion, scaffolded with curriculum materials. So again, I think we'll keep those snapshots coming to you so you get that immersion in kind of how do we do this work on the ground, and that's how it happens.
Thank you.
Thank you, and that makes sense to have that as part of your regular updates, like we added building updates and COVID updates, and so it'll be good to kind of see how that unfolds during the school year.
And last year, there was a 9-week SEL, a social emotional learning program at the high school, where once a week in one of the classes, they did a lesson that was different each, so that it was hit every single student that way.
Yeah. Thank you. So that's ours for tonight. I think
All right,
we're
thank you. Dave, do you have anything you want to share now? I know you have some later on in the agenda too.
Yeah, I can give you just 2 quick updates. Just wanted to update everybody regarding food service. Continues to be going well. As mentioned, not only supporting the staff at the schools, catering to the community and needs, available, accessible, and putting himself right in the trenches. And just a quick note on transportation. As everyone knows, it's kind of a challenge this year for not just Westborough, but for other districts. Dealing with unbalanced routine, more so than that has started to work itself out. We are frequently in contact with NRT related to stagger some of the buses, but use other buses innovatively, whether it's drop off at one school and kind of have the kids come off and then go to another school to avoid delays. I really have to give a big shout out because they're thinking innovatively. One of the approaches is to not say no or do something they're really saying. In addition to that, we're trying to do our best related to sports. Thank you.
They just gave me the high five to maybe hit the button.
So we are, things are progressing in the right direction. And again, we are reassessing all the time, but progressively moving forward.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll move into our school committee member reports. So Andrew, welcome, and congratulations, I think, are in order for you. No.
What do I do now?
Okay, well, to start off, so the Westborough Rangers football team had their first home opener under the lights last Friday, which was very fun. The high school's Vision of Global Health Club held a car wash last weekend to raise money for cataract surgeries in developing countries, and I think they raised over $400, which is really nice. The student council at the high school have begun preparations for their mental health project, which will hopefully include a school-wide activity event sort of thing. They also took part in the Aspet River cleanup, which is an annual thing where they help pick up trash and litter in the surrounding areas. It was super fun. And last week was Literacy Week at the Westborough High School, which essentially included a virtual book meeting, school-wide book assembly, where Jenny Torres Sanchez, the author of We Are Not From Here, came in and did a really compelling book talk. And I just wanted to personally thank Mr. Callahan for putting this together, because like a lot of the book selections this year from they talked about a lot of sensitive topics, such as the Japanese internment camps, the history of black racism, the struggles of undocumented immigrants, and I really think these virtual book talks, they provided a lot of thought-provoking discussion among students, and it was a great start to making the school environment more accepting of other kids' backgrounds, regardless of where they come from and their history. So yeah, moving on. The Gibbons open house was yesterday for 8th graders and will be today for 7th graders. And last week, the Blue Shift program just started at the Gibbons Middle School, which is this fun meeting organized by the high school robotics team at the middle school to get middle schoolers excited and to promote interest in the robotics team. The Hastings parent group is working on planning the Hastings Fall Festival, which will be October 1st, and it will be filled with outdoor family activities, ice cream trucks, and a book fair, so that'll be fun. And students are learning about the power of growth mindset in classrooms and tackling challenging things in life. And yeah, the rest of the elementary schools are looking forward to open house tomorrow, and they're taking the necessary health precautions to spread out the arrival times. And that's all I have for today.
Oh, does anyone have any questions for Andrew? Thank you. That was a good collection of updates from the schools. Thanks. Sarah?
Thank you. I actually read We Are Not From Here because I had 3 people in my house that were supposed to read it, so I read as well. So I loved the fact that the author was coming. I thought that was a nice enhanced experience, so I was going to thank them as well. So thanks for bringing that up. I didn't get to hear it, but I heard about it, so. I want to mention that 2 Wednesdays from now is the International Walk to School Day that our elementary schools always participate in, and Mill Pond does kind of a modified walk sometimes, and Gibbons is able to participate as well. And that's through our partner, Safe Routes to School, and they provide resources and fun stickers, and it's just another enhanced experience for the students and families. And I know at Fails, they all meet at one spot and do like a walking train up to school. And then at Hastings, I know Ms. Degata, almost forgot her new name, gets a bus for the parents, so the parents can help them walk back or walk and get back to their cars. So it's just it's a great experience. I know Officer Japolite back there, who's at our meeting, does always help out, take some pictures for me, puts them on social media. So we hashtag Safe Routes to School. So anyway, everyone is invited to walk, bike, or roll to school or work or wherever that day. You can bike to the Forbes building. And the other thing I want to mention is the Westborough Turkey Trot is planning is underway. We're hoping to have a live in-person event outside at the high school. It's always the Saturday before Thanksgiving. This year that is November 20th. Registration is open, westboroughturkeytrot.com. So go there and register. Also sponsors, we need some sponsors. Sponsor checks are coming in too. So we're hoping to have a big event this year.
Great. And I saw that the turkey logo was updated to take his mask off, or her
Turkey
mask
logo
off.
has his mask off. He has a new,
No mask.
new sun in the background. He has a new look, new sun. And I could tell you the shirt color, but I'm going to wait.
That's always the big reveal.
you
I
wait
have
on that.
7 shirts, so it looks like
Shirt color.
catalog.
I know this is the 8th one. It's the 8th one.
That's right.
The navy is the hard to obtain.
Yeah.
Maybe you did something right that year.
Thank you, Sarah. Raghu, do you have anything to share tonight?
Yeah, I have a few. this past Monday, on the senior night, the Westborough High School's counseling department put on a presentation for college preparation, which was very useful for both seniors and juniors. We saw it on YouTube and picked up a lot of good tips, and for those kids and parents who missed that, a recording of that will be on the school counseling department home site, is it? On Westborough High School website. So when you get a chance, please do watch that. You can pick up a lot of tips for your kids or for yourself. Sustainability committee met, and we are working with some kids from Westborough High School in the environmental club, looking for we are looking at the feasibility of putting solar panels on. Initial thought process is to put it in the parking lot area and go from there. But we are looking at the feasibility, and kids are helping us to do that study, and we'll see where it goes. This coming Friday, September 24th, the Massachusetts Youth Climate Coalition is holding a climate frontline rally in Boston Commons at 3 o'clock. I completely support that because their point, I was talking to a few youth, and their point is, if you guys don't, they were pointing to me and my generation, if you guys don't do something, because you say it's costly, it's going to end up being a lot more costly for us to do something about. So that's the reason why they want to bring this up and say, hey, we have to do something. So I completely support that. So those are my 3 updates.
Lisa?
Did you mention Arts in Common?
No.
Oh, that's all you.
Well, Saturday, October 2nd, is the Arts in Common at our, right in the center of Westborough from 11 to 5. There'll be arts and crafts and performers from across New England and booths, and it's a pretty exciting yearly event. So Arts in Common on Saturday, October 2nd. And I also, on a second note, wanted to mention one of our Westborough High School students, Viggy, and I apologize if I mispronounce the last name, Vanchanathan, is a member of the Master Plan Advisory Committee. Viggy received special recognition from the consultants and the planning board last night for the level of input and for creating and running a student survey to gather information for the plan. Just wanted to give a shout out to one of our own.
I was in Vicky's subcommittee for downtown planning, and it was really fun to work with him. He did a great job. Very focused with robust ideas and a real commitment, and gets what it is to be on a committee and produced work. So it was really great to work with him.
Yeah. Steve, anything to share now, or do you just have building project updates?
I'll just do an update.
Okay, thanks. So I have a few things to share before we move on to that. This Saturday from 9 to 1, there's going to be a fishing challenge put on by the Westborough Civic Club. We love the Civic Club, so we love to support their events. And so it's free registration. It's at the Minuteman Park on Upton Road, so plenty of places to park right along there. The water's right there. There'll be prizes. It's for all ages, so kids and adults can fish. And it's usually a really fun event and usually a good turnout there. So looking forward to that. And tomorrow night, there is a tri-board budget summit meeting. I'll be co-chairing, actually, I think I'm tri-chairing.
Tri-chairing, yeah.
I'm tri-chairing with Mike Beretti, who's the chair of the Advisory Finance Committee, and Alan Edinburgh, chair of the Select Board. And the purpose of this tri-board budget summit meeting is to bring together the Select Board, the Advisory Finance Committee, and the School Committee for all of us to better understand the FY23 budget priorities priorities before the budget process begins. There's an agenda posted, which I shared with all of you today, and there will be a series of presentations from different town departments and leaders, and then there'll be time for questions after each presentation. So I know Amber's going to be there, and the schools are presenting really on 3 big ideas, which is we're going to be presenting on our capital projects, which we'll hear a little more about tonight, staffing and contracts, and just thinking about what needs to roll over in our budget and how that impacts our budget, and then looking at COVID-19 budget restoration, so looking at recouping some of the things that were cut last year, and it's all about forecasting that for all the town leaders to come together to get an understanding of that. I don't know if you had anything else to add to that, Amber?
No, I think you've hit the big ones. I mean, I think those will be the 3 that we'll emphasize, and we're doing kind of large overview, not a lot of granular detail on those, but just a chance to really say, like, these are the things on the horizon for us where impacts come forward, and I think those will be the ones that we'll hit on. I think it's going to be a productive discussion. It always feels good just to bring the boards together and kind of see where people tend to have questions, and it just gives us our own kind of forecasting, so I look forward to it.
Yeah, I look forward to it being in person too. On Zoom, it's just not the same. And then Amber and I, at least Amber and I, are attending the Advisory Finance Committee meeting on September 27th to discuss the warrant articles we're bringing forward to Fall Town Meeting. And as a reminder, Fall Town Meeting is on Monday, October 18th at 7 p.m. at the high school.
On that, I think Daniel's prepped some backup on our L numbers and the need to add that staffing position. And I think then Dave will give us data points on the payroll position. So I'll put those into really 2 simple slides, and then Daniel is able to be there with me to provide backup. And I will or won't, I'm not sure Dave is going to be there that night, but his data is following me. So we'll see.
The data. And I know that Advisory Finance Committee tends to run their meetings as a hybrid meeting, so there's always opportunity to Zoom in as well. So I'm glad we were invited to attend. We always look forward to working with them and answering their thoughtful questions that they have on budget items that come forward. So I'm glad to being back in that cycle of meeting with them as well. All right, so we'll move on to building project updates, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Durrett.
Well, to begin with, and not to take too much spark out of the other projects going on at Hastings, which is installation of the sprinkler system is now restarted with the piping being located above the ceiling, which was the original plan and the design way back 2 years ago. Also, the design work for the HVAC is nearly complete, and the project is being bundled up for bid sometime soon. And then I think the most exciting thing, and I'm trying to downplay it, is Fails is now in the stage where all those things we've talked about for years and years and years, beginning next month, early next month, furniture will arrive and be parsed in that part of the building that's ready to receive it, such as the second floor classrooms. All the detail work is now well underway, and there's an awful lot of things that are coming due to be completed. For those of you who have looked at the roof there, you'll see that the majority of the solar panels are now mounted. They'll be doing the interconnection of the panel wiring next week. The interconnection of the system in terms of metering, the solar product is also being put together. As a matter of fact, the Verizon telephone link will be installed, we hope, this Friday. And so the march goes on to be able to open the school as promised Veterans Day weekend in November. So as a matter of fact, things you can't see behind the fence is that the grading and loam and seed is occurring in different places as the parts of the project reach fruition. If you watched along the fence line on Eli Whitney, you probably saw they were installing the streetlights along that fence. The office trailers and stuff will disappear within the next couple of weeks, with those who are still needed for construction will be housed in different places in the new building. And so a lot of things are coming to a head right now. As a matter of fact, a good portion of the geothermal system is up and operating. They're still chasing a leak in one of the loops. There are 8 loops, so 7 of them are up and functioning. The last one, they're trying to find out where the leak is. And so many things that we've talked about ad infinitum forever now are finally being ticked off the list to be completed, including elevators and final inspections and commissioning of equipment. And by the way, I was reminded today of an argument that we had years ago in the design of this thing. So it's a 4-pipe heating system, which means you can air condition a part of the building and heat another part if you need to. And that's always been a bugaboo with HVAC systems, where in the shoulder periods of the year between summer and winter, you either have a heat on and it's too hot, or you have too much heat outside and you can't air condition. So all of that's been eliminated by this design. And of course, when we get done with this, it'll be another school for the kids that will also have air conditioning at the start of school and the end of school. So anyway, it's very exciting for us on the team, of which a number of people in this room have been major contributors to this effort. And, you know, I guess we haven't talked about budget for a long time, but although we have been very frugal with money on this job, we are still within the budget as authorized by the town. And it hasn't been easy during COVID to do that. For 3 times during the project, we had to go back and change the specifications on certain things so that, in fact, we could afford what we wanted rather than having super systems. In many cases, we had to go back to ordinary stuff. But I think when you finally get a chance to walk through the school, you will see how unique it is, particularly with the skylight lighting in the rooms. On a sunny day, you don't need electricity. Even on a cloudy day or at sunset like this, it's still pretty bright in those rooms. So I'm very hopeful that everything will come to pass as promised, and so far, so good. And with that, there's a lot of excited people in the school system.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
I was going to say, it's lots of feelings, because it's exciting, it's sort of nerve-wracking, and it's, you know, like you said, Steve, we've been talking about this and looking at this for years and years and years, so to have it come to an end feels good.
Now it's coming really fast.
Yeah.
Really, really fast.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions for Steve about the Fails project?
And I guess just to repeat the solar system, because Raghu was talking about the potential to do other solar in the school system. I believe the count is 270 panels on the roof designed to produce more energy than the school will need, so that in fact that excess energy can be used as a credit against the electric bill for other school buildings. And as part of the design, and we're very close to now having that on board as well.
That's a good example of what you were talking about, what those students are talking to you about putting in the investment now, even though it, you know, is more expensive than a traditional heating system. Having that there to produce that electricity in the end is going to end up.
Yeah, and you know, what never is done in public design is the life cycle cost of a development. You know, it's always the first cost is the one that kills us, but when you do a life cycle cost analysis, it makes sense to put things like solar or geothermal into the project. And at Hastings, where we have had geothermal, the record shows how much money the town saved as a result of that as part of the heating system there. And I think we'll find that Newfields will do the same, to the extent that we see reduction in electric bills for other buildings.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thanks.
Revenue. That's good.
So we'll move on to citizens' requests. Is there anyone here tonight who would like to come forward and address the school committee? Great. Do you have a question? Why don't you,
Come up to
you
the
have to come up to the microphone?
I don't even know if it's on.
You can ask us after if you want.
It's an easy crowd. It's
Yeah.
Yeah, you
it's
can,
super
it's not
easy.
that scary.
Do you want to?
Yeah, come on up. You can,
Okay, all right, thanks.
Don't be bashful.
Yeah.
we love it when people ask
We
us
love questions.
We're like, oh my gosh, there's a question. Come on down. Like the lonely board. Wait, we have a visitor.
Yeah, we'll get you next escort. You can come up with.
So we'll move on to our next agenda item, and that is our annual approval of agreement with our school resource officer. So I'd like to welcome Detective Dapolite. Why don't you come on up, Detective Dapolite? Join us up here at the front table. It's nice to see you.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
And we know you're working more regularly in the buildings again, and it's nice to have you and everyone else back in the buildings. So welcome, thank you. You want to
Thank
tell
you.
us a little bit about what this is all about?
Sure, this is the annual agreement that we do between the police department and the school department. It's called a memorandum of understanding. This year, again, I don't know if I haven't read it yet, I apologize, but again, it looks like the same one we've had in years past.
It is, yeah.
The big thing that I always want to stress, and I can never stress this enough, is as working with the schools, I never act as a disciplinarian for the schools. I am there to advise, to help out, but I will never impose any sort of detentions or any sort of other punishment that the school may handle out due to a student having a student issue. So I'm there more of a guide and to help out and to make sure the students are making good decisions and be a positive role model.
Yep. And you usually work in plain clothes because you are a detective.
Yes.
Yep. And I also know that, your role is to really help our students be successful in the schools and sort of whatever that takes. And I know that the work that you do is often behind the scenes.
And a lot of it also is just getting to know the students. That's something I missed last year tremendously.
Yeah.
So actually being able to see the students has been phenomenal.
Yeah. And are you coaching this year too?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I don't know if you saw, I was on my phone and I apologize for looking down, but assistant coach with the golf team and found out we won our match against Shrewsbury.
Oh, good.
Oh,
Okay.
congrats.
Pretty happy.
That's great. Oh, that's nice. So that gives you another chance to get to know some of the students. And
just to compliment around the work that Chip does, I think that one of the things realizes that a lot of the support that resource officers can provide is oftentimes coordination of services and overlap and answering information around systems that might be outside of school that can impact families and require support, where oftentimes we need someone to help us navigate. And actually, Chip and I spent probably 4 hours together today in a mental health case where we needed support around being able to navigate some systems. And so I think, again, much of that work is very much invisible, but is part of having a resource there for you to coordinate with. So I'm happy to see the agreement between us, and then Chip will come back usually in the midwinter to spring, come back and talk about just more specifically, we usually do that in executive session, where he can provide the school safety updates on protocols, and so we'll put that into the agenda.
Well, we appreciate all your work you do in the schools. We appreciate your commitment to being our school resource officer, that you have that long-term relationship with our students and our building and our administrators, because I know you work very closely with them as well.
Thank you.
I would like to, we need to take an action and vote to approve the school resource officer agreement.
So move the resource officer agreement.
Steve, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Sarah. Any discussion? Right, all in favor?
Aye.
Right, so I have that agreement here. I'm going to sign it and get everyone's signatures while we're actually here in this room so that we can move the paperwork forward and sort of as a formality to make sure that it happens. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
thanks a lot.
Have a great night.
I have a question. Chip,
Oh, yes, of course, Steve.
how long you been resource officer for the town?
So luckily enough, I've been a school resource officer for over 10 years. I actually was part-time for the first 7 years, and then this new chief came in and decided to make it a full-time position. Placed me in the Detective Bureau, in plainclothes, and in the schools full-time while schools are in session.
The reason why I asked the question is that I think in our school system, you have been such an asset to the kids. And I guess in our litigious environment in this world, the fact that everything is smooth and we never hear any complaints about the service that the police department and you in particular provide to the school system. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. But if anything ever comes up, please don't hesitate at all. I don't care what it is, really, to contact me, email, whatever you need to get through, Amber, maybe whatever. But, I have no problem ever discussing anything with any of you.
Thank you, and thank you for your work in all our schools. We appreciate it.
Thank you again.
All right, take care.
He was helping the middle school
follow up with
baseball team last
call you tomorrow.
spring.
Yep.
He's in many spots.
Yeah, great, thank you. All right, so next on our agenda is a review of capital projects. So I'd like to invite Bob and Kelly up. You guys can come up front if you want, have a seat, and then you can be on the microphone, and our folks watching at home can hear you. Yeah, he'll put it up for you.
Yeah, he'll decide. So this is an important overview, and I think Dave and I will kibitz around parts to provide any additional support to the process of the presentation, and we'll break it down. I think Bob will walk through how they're going to present it to you and how to take questions. And then we also have a chunk of time during retreat to make sure that we can go back and have more in-depth conversation on things, and we can slow down and you've had even more time to look at the work. Sure. So we'll turn it over to Bob and Kelly, the Director of Buildings and Grounds and Assistant Director of Buildings and Grounds. They work seamlessly as a team, so they kind of come as a dynamic duo together. You'll sometimes see them jetting in and out of schools to get things done. So I appreciate the work they've put into this, and it's kind of always a continual evolution of numbers and process and bids, and so it's a very fluid process. So I think 20 minutes before we came down, they were getting additional pricing. So just kind of the nature of the beast. So we'll turn it over to them and let them share.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amber. First of all, I'd like to thank Kelly publicly. She put most of the bulk work behind putting this and assembling the package together and worked over the weekend, which has been very, very busy for all of us. There's a lot of moving parts, and I wanted to thank her for that because we met the deadline, thanks to Kelly. But I'll give it a quick overview, as you can see on the screen. This is broken down by year, fiscal year 23, 24, 25, and 26. A lot of these are very familiar to the people on the board. As you know, some of it is redundant. The figures have been escalated due to COVID and other circumstances, and just general escalation from year to year. Pushed out. Some of the issues have been pushed out from one year to the next to try and, use the resources that we have in an intelligent manner. So the Armstrong School Playground is under fiscal year 23, and I'll read through this quickly. And then the backup sheets are here if you need them. We have a package put together, and I think Dan has all the slides available if we need to, go back and look at that if you'd like. So $350,000 for the Armstrong School Playground is being put in this year, in capital plan. The replacement of the kitchen walk-in freezer is $40,000. The replacement of the entire roof is $2,400,000. That's the membrane for the roof at the Hastings School. And as Steve mentioned earlier, of course, we have the sprinkler system that's currently being installed at the Hastings School, and the HVAC system eventually will get bid out to public bid. They're finishing the design, as Steve mentioned earlier. We did get an updated price today, an estimate from the engineering company, architectural firm that we have under contract, and hopefully those bids will be going out within the next 30 days or so, is our understanding. So they're finishing it up. They have an architect on board. They have a structural engineer, professional structural engineer consultant that has been looking at the roof to see if there's any structural enhancements or supplemental steel that may need to be added to the roof to support the additional equipment for the the HVAC equipment that'll eventually end up in the roof. So the figures that we have, of course, include the ADA upgrades, which is a requirement due to the square footage enhancements to the school. So that figure's been updated. I can either share that now with everybody, or we can send it out in a memo, whichever you prefer. But basically, it's $4.2 million, which includes $200,000 estimate for the ADA improvements and $200,000 for the anticipated structural steel improvements. So, and I know there's a gap involved there for the funding, which will come hopefully from the Americans Rescue Act and the money that's been already funded. So that's basically the Hastings School. Of Steve or anybody would like to add to that. Great.
No, I guess I will comment in this manner. When we were working on Gibbons and Armstrong, that the roofs were about as inexpensive effort for construction at the time they were done, to the point where it was almost, for Armstrong, a roof that was very similar to a canvas roof with asphalt on top of it. So that's been one of the bugaboos, I think, for many of the projects that we do, that under today's state building code, you can't do the things that were done then. And for us to make improvements to them, as is discussed here, there are upgrades of the structure itself that are required, whether it's here at Hastings or whether it's going to be upgrades at the high school, in order to carry the loads that are now going to be set on the roof. And I guess just to finish the thought, that whole issue is one of the reasons why it's difficult to put solar on the old school building roofs. And that's the reason why the plan that was discussed by Raghu earlier is the way that we can do it, by using the real estate at schools, such as panelized structures that support solar panels over parking lots, as many other school districts have done. But I think also, just to close the loop on Raghu's point, it will save us money. We just have to look at the end benefit against the overall cost, which will pay out.
So two things to enhance part of that discussion. I think for tonight, I think one of the core areas we really want to look at and understand is the FY23, because we need to forward that package to the town tomorrow. They gave us an extension on the deadline for that because we wanted to vote it here. So really the actionable work tonight is, you know, seeking your approval for the recommendations that we will be putting forward for FY23, recognizing that it's always evolving as things shift and move against how approvals happen. So I think, you know, the others we do want to make sure we step you through, but I think then coming back and talking about FY23, we could do that now or in depth, but I mean, I think that's an important part of tonight's action for you. And, you know, I think, I don't know what your preference is as a committee, Madam Chair, if you want to talk about FY23 in depth now, and then kind of, you know, take questions, and then we can come back and kind of skim through the others. Does that seem logical for tonight?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Plus, I know we have that as an agenda item on our retreat to look forward to FY24 through 27. So,
and the town is requesting us to begin to do that update, which then Dave would be forwarding. So the note around the backup you got on the Armstrong Playground, you remember we brought that forward to annual town meeting in FY18 for the FY19 fiscal year, I believe, and it was defeated. And therefore, respect to process, it has sat for 2 years. And now we are bringing it back for discussion with the completion of the Fales Playground and upgrade to that building, keeping an equity-based approach to 3 strong elementary buildings having quality play and buildings, you know, is an important part of this work. And the estimate update left it at the 350, which would be what we would forward with the drawings and the sample options that you got in your backup. I don't know if you want to talk about them one by one like this, what would be helpful to you?
Yeah, I think one by one, just to kind of get the overview of it and see
Okay.
if anyone has questions. About the Armstrong Playground. Go ahead.
Well, I would suggest we don't get into the weeds, in part because the school committee as a group has seen the detail. We have a 76-page presentation before us to analyze any way you want.
Right, Steve?
Yeah, that's right. Well, actually,
Printed it for you as well, Steve.
Some read aloud with
yeah, I actually did look at the 76 pages.
light reading.
And I'm not sure that, that digging in great depth, for the public's benefit, is going to be useful because this will eventually be made available to them, on the internet. So I would just like to talk to the merit of it and I guess the justification behind the dollars. For example, as Amber just said, the playground at Armstrong was part of the original project. Things happened at Armstrong for which we could not get the answer out fast enough to put it into the package. However, we did have eventually the design details, the estimates, the help of the architect at the time. And as Amber recalled, we went to town meeting to try to get the town to vote that even from the monies that we still had left over, that playground. For whatever reason, it didn't happen. And I think, the equity issue of having the same quality stuff at Armstrong as also at Hastings and at the other schools is the thing to do. And I would say that's the pitch that I would like to hear tonight, because I've seen all the detail. And that detail, I think, will just, cause people to turn it off and go watch something else. So that would be my request. And I will say that the playground system equipment arrived at Fails today.
Oh, nice.
So it'll be there soon.
Yeah.
So I don't know, that's my suggestion.
Yeah, and I was going to say that the playgrounds are not, they don't just sit there and they're not just open from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. They're used before school, after school programs. I see kids on the Armstrong Playground all the time on the weekends. Lots of parents go play tennis at the tennis courts and let the kids play on the playgrounds. It's a very well-used playground structure because Armstrong sits in the middle of a neighborhood and lots of people can walk there and use it. So it's an investment in our town to kind of upgrade it to a level that's appropriate for safety, and also an equity issue with the other elementary schools to make sure that we're offering a comparable experience to all students at all schools.
So the numbers are there and they are comprehensive to the presentation, and I think this helps us target the information that Bob and Kelly and Dave will share when they take it to the capital subcommittee. So they will get an opportunity to present on each of the core items for FY23. And, I think to Steve's point, we don't need to go into the weeds. We just need an affirmation that you remain comfortable that the rotation of the FY23 projects remain logical for you.
Yeah, sorry, that was I was gonna, just by process, just correct me if I'm wrong, but this is our capital improvement plan that goes to the capital committee.
Right.
And so all this has been, presented and rolled over the years, and so it's also combined with the town projects. I know you guys worked hard to stagger things out, so I know ours look expensive, but maybe it's matched with other things in the town, whereas like last year, we didn't have too many projects. And then this year we have more to bring forward. So then the capital committee, which Steve is on, and I know Bob and Kelly go to, then vote what to bring forward to town meeting through a capital article, or it could still be a school committee article, right, if it didn't get vetted by the capital committee?
Yeah, I think that's to be ironed out. I mean, I think the hope of the process is that we stay within the fold of the larger planning process, and if one of our projects isn't forwarded, then we don't put it forward on our own, and it would then rotate into the capital for the following year, and the argument would then be targeted with more robust planning. as you notice, the high school replacement of the chillers was a #1 item for us last year and was forwarded and was not selected to be funded. Therefore, everything adjusted and cascaded, and we took planning steps working with Dave and us to then adjust the planning. So it is now a high priority within this year's tier. So we stayed within the larger process, and I think we have to represent ourselves strongly at the table, which I know, Steve does.
Speaking to the process, first of all, the school committee has an obligation to review everything that we're responsible for, particularly maintenance as well as capital projects, on behalf of the town. It would be stupid not to look at things like this and maintain our equipment and keep it up to snuff as we have as a school system. Our obligation is to make these kinds of summaries and present them to the town meeting as part of the process, as was just mentioned. The the Capital Expenditures Committee reviews the detail of what we just talked about. I think it's probably 30 pages on the fiscal 23 presentation. And the detail and all of the things that go into this and the justification for why it's there. There are many things that then the Capital Expenditures Committee has to weigh against how much money the town has and distribute that money fairly between the various needs that we have. But on the other hand, because it's our obligation, even though some of these price tags are quite large, this work has to be done. And our obligation in the team that you see here tonight is to present it fairly so that the evaluation of it is then eventually presented at a town meeting to weigh whether they decide this or something else. So again, the level of detail necessary that's in the package meets the criteria for the Capital Expenditures Committee, ultimately for the Finance Committee, for the Board of Selectmen, and the town's administration, if you will, through the town manager. So this is not a light effort. It's in great detail, and as we said, we have architects' estimates, we have engineers' estimates, we have review of alternatives, we have all kinds of different things that are in this package, so that we're not just throwing a dart on the wall and saying this project is 4.2 million. It's arrived at through the details of this process. So I don't know, we'll end up talking about them all probably anyway, but the effort is here and it's available to the public in any one of the forums that it's going to be presented at. And we will probably beat this to death between now and the time we go town meeting in March.
And I also think that one of the things that certainly Bob and Kelly, something that you're doing is considering the urgency of some projects as well. Sometimes things come up and they have to happen like this year or next year, whether it's a compliance issue so that another construction project can move forward, or it's a repair that really, like, we're gonna have to close the gymnasium if we don't make this repair, right? So when I'm looking at what is prioritized for FY23, I'm also thinking like some of these things must be at the end of their life, or it's like I'm thinking about the walk-in freezer, right?
We're very lucky to have Bill Gabarino that really keeps a lot of things going for us.
Limping along until we can actually replace it, right? Yeah.
Can you speak to those things? Because I think that's what, I think those are the important things for people who are listening to hear, and ourselves as well. I mean, I see it in the 30 pages, where I can see the existing playground, I can see the existing, but people who are just either hearing about it for the first time, even though it was certainly very public in 2018, the playground.
Well,
And people don't know that there's parts of it that are in disarray. There's parts of it that are safety issues. There's parts that aren't accessible. There's a drainage issue. So when they see a big number or any number and they want to know why, I think they do want to hear those things, and will we hear those tomorrow again? Will we be presenting them to you?
Yeah, I think you hear them, to Steve's point, the next stage is for them to go to the capital committee, and thoughtful, well-conceived, tight presentations of our list get presented to capital committee, because they have to emerge out of that committee. So right now, stages-wise, you are the right people to have more detail, because you're giving approval that this is the list you want to go forward. And then the in-depth discussions, rating systems, and in-depth presentations on these articles will be made to the capital committee by Dave, Bob, and Kelly. And then Steve participates as one of the members who then rates the projects. So everybody who's submitting from across the town departments gets an evening to come and do their in-depth presentation to the capital committee. So the next step from here would be it goes to that committee, and then we will get an evening to come and present. And then from there, based upon how the capital committee votes, things would then be shared through process up until town meeting, utilizing the systems that we always have, attending meetings and making presentations and pushing out information across district. So that trajectory is one we know. So there'll be much more to come, obviously.
And I did have a question about, so for FY23, there's at the high school, the replacement of the two, the chillers, and then it looks like there's a lot of roof work scheduled for FY24. I'm assuming those projects can be done separately, or does one have to happen before the other? Is that?
For fiscal year '24?
Yeah, I'm looking at just all that roof
Well, from a
work.
cost-effective standpoint, A and B should be done concurrently.
Okay.
Whether they can be done separately, sure, but at the same token, it's just going to end up costing more in the long run. So
Yep.
we've got them combined as A and B.
Okay, and then that rim repair if they're doing the roof and the rim, that kind of makes sense to do it together?
That's separate.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, the rim is separate from the roof.
okay, all right. And I know that rim is,
I mean, there's different arguments. I mean, in some ways, you could say a comprehensive roof repair for rim and roof should be done in one package, but the number might be too big.
Yeah.
And we're working with the capital committee. I think they're a good committee, and those are the kind of conversations they'll have.
Yep.
Our job is to stage them out, as you say, and you can see that the Hastings school roof bumped in front of the Armstrong school roof and the high school roof, because it has to run concurrently with the other HVAC work and things we want to finish there, where we already have funds set aside. And Dave was going to add just another point of remembrance regarding the
high school, in FY23, the high school replacement of the two high school chillers. If you remember from last school committee, that's part of our ARPA presentation. So again, where we left off was that, Amber and I suggested basically, because it was approximately, $11 million up to the $5 million that's available, 5.7 that's available. Amber and I suggested somewhat of a weighted formula for them to kind of prioritize whether it's partially funding or fully funding things. That is yet to be decided how they're going to do it, but I did want to note that that's a significant number that potentially could be partially funded or holistically funded from ARPA. We don't know. We submitted 2 for ARPA, which was the gap for the Hastings, HVAC and the ADA compliance, which was anywhere from 2.2 to 1.8 million, depending on contingencies and some new quotes. But, and that's what we prioritized. But again, our additional submission was for the high school chillers. So, I mean, it may not be a whole number right now. It's unfortunate that we're just in a little bit of limbo. But I did want to note that number may either be reduced or come down or come off from this part of the FY23 figures based on the ARPA submission.
yeah.
We found out the hard way that if we don't present it in every venue, then we may not get it in any venue. So,
Right, I think that's the benefit of the shift in the capital planning structure that your team has put in place, working with Kim and those departments, Steve. I think that being able to have a comprehensive approach to that work is much more thoughtful to the funding balance. And so I think there's going to be a really interesting interplay this year between the ARPA funds and these large capital projects. And so I really like the fact that, we'll get those in alignment, and everybody's going to come to the table with all their numbers, and I think there's good things ahead for us to be able to get town projects done, inclusive of some of our work. Other questions you have on the FY23 ones? By the way, the walk-in freezer, I had heard Christy thought there might be a grant for one of those. Do you want to speak to that? Do you know any more about it yet?
We're talking about trying to do that grant twice a year instead of once a year. And, walk-in freezers, Christy thought were on the list. Things like some HVAC things, and there could be, if we do it twice a year, if I'm remembering correctly, then it would give us that opportunity.
Right. So there's things like that I think more comprehensive planning are giving us ways to leverage, like that might come off because we can put it into a grant. So I think the capital process is going to be really a busy committee this year as they look at all of this.
I think it's going to be very dynamic, and this is a plan. It's called a plan for a reason, because it's going to change and grow, and I think those are going to shift around a little bit.
I would just add one final comment is that, whether it's grants, ARPA, capital, the symmetry doesn't align. So, as Steve mentioned, we're kind of putting our best foot forward, even if it is redundant, based on the fact that, the timing may not be concise based on when the town wants it versus when DESI puts out grants and things like that, or we even find a grant that may support this. So essentially by being transparent, we're putting our best foot forward, but at the same time, I don't want to say this is worst case scenario, but this is how we prioritize, and this is what we know now based on estimates and engineering. But at the same time, we're always looking for other ways to leverage resources to offset some of that cost.
Yeah, and I know there are timelines too, so some of this work has to happen when school is closed, like during the summer. So it's figuring out when does the money arrive in order to have the construction happen. It's a lot in the summer.
I have a question, only because I'm concerned about the Armstrong roof. I'm clearly, by looking at the list, that the priorities of the other roofs have come first, which means they're in worse shape than Armstrong. Is that true or not?
Well, that's not necessarily true. As Amber has pointed out earlier, our main focus right now is Hastings School. We need to coordinate the work for the Hastings School in order to make sure that the project is completed in its entirety, which means the sprinkler system, the HVAC system, the structural integrity of the roof is enhanced to the extent that it can support the new equipment and the HVAC system. So that all has to be kind of, scheduled,
right?
Collectively together in order to finish the project while the money's there.
But I think to speak to her point is simply, is the roof going to make it until fiscal year 25?
Oh, no, absolutely. We still maintain the roofs. The roofs are being constantly maintained. We have good roofing companies that come out and we plug the leaks, if you would, whenever they need to be. And, we've done our best, and the roofs, I think, will survive in the priority list that we have for now. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the Armstrong roof is in worse condition than the Hastings roofs, or vice versa. So just a matter of
I would agree.
Allocating the funds. Yeah.
It's a great point, Lisa. So to the point of decision-making, we spent a lot of time, and the four of us spent probably 3 hours together working through the lists. And, I think that we've had a lot of funding warrant articles provided for Hastings that are waiting for use, and that money doesn't go further the longer we wait, and we have pieces of project there. And so it's kind of a leadership decision when we're like, we need to focus. We need to target those funds, leverage the warrant articles that have been provided and the bids that have already half done, and get that work coordinated, because it's not going to work otherwise. And so it's a hard decision, but bumping that Armstrong roof is logical. And the priority of the high school chillers having gotten bumped, if we bump it 3 years off, we look illogical to the capital committee. So all of it is just an important process to discussion, and that's all relevant. I think you could see the Armstrong roof, come back up in the system into FY24, to Dave's point, depending upon what happens with ARPA, the funding, and the overall package of what happens in capital. So, I think it's a dynamic system, and it's going to be year to year. And so for now, pushing it further down, it also could be done in different pieces, which we're doing some more research on. So I think that's where the capital committee will be important, and we'll just figure it out together.
Yeah, there's actually 3 different roofing systems at Armstrong, one over the gymnasium, and then 2 separate sections. Of course, the new section doesn't need a new roof because it's new. But, as Amber just pointed out, that could be split into 3 different sections. That particular school could be done that way. And I just wanted to go back to your question on the A and B roof at the high schools, speaking of roofs, and the rim repairs, so everybody understands the 2 different trades. The roof is a replacement. To try and get that done all at once at the high school makes sense from an economic standpoint. But the rim itself, if you recall from the pictures that were submitted in the past years, the concern is that the rim, which is the concrete fascia that goes around the building, they have the rebar in some areas is exposed due to weather and wear and tear and so forth. And pieces of the concrete chip off and they fall. So some of the concern is safety. But at the same token, we've been around long enough to inspect it day in and day out. And, it doesn't feel as if there's going to be large, giant chunks of concrete falling on people's heads. So, but, it is a different trade. It's not something that can be done, at the same time as the roof, because it'd be in each other's way, basically. So
Yeah, I can see that, yeah. If you're doing the rim, you don't necessarily have access to the roof.
But I think we're okay with that by pushing that to 24.
Okay.
And as Amber pointed out, as things change, it could very well get pushed out to 25 next year.
Right, I know that rim repair has come up, we kind of hear about it, and I spend a lot of time at the high school.
We're just trying to keep everything, we're trying to keep everything on the list and focus so that it's not a surprise to anybody going forward. And to utilize the funds that are available now rather than later when the costs are obviously going to increase and escalate. So, and then you'd be in a bad position to come back to the town and ask for more money after you've already had approved funds. So that's basically the way we've prioritized it for now.
I think they did a really good job on this. It was a really good discussion. Dave's been keeping Kim Kim Foster updated so that she's aware of kind of where we are in process. So I feel like it's a coordinated system at this point, and I feel like these initial decisions feel sound.
Well, thank you. I appreciate even the answer, to understand the answer, because I think people, anyone who's part of that process of seeing what it looks like, you wonder, how long can you repair versus replace, and but I understand the process, and it's a good one.
And it is that process itself that when it gets too expensive to repair, when you have other priorities, then the priority of it changes and it moves up to the top. So, that's the game we've been playing here forever, is what creates the priority to put it in fiscal 23 versus any other year. And even then, if it's in fiscal 23, it isn't necessarily going to be approved by the Capital Expenditures Committee when there are other things going on in the town as well. So, but when it becomes too expensive to continue the way we've maintained it, then it goes to the top of the list, and it gets treated differently than it is right now. So have no fear, we'll hear about it soon if there are buckets in different classrooms in that school.
Can I thank you both for your everyday maintenance of the schools as well, because I know this is the major projects and they come up, we talk about them yearly or all year, as Steve said, but I know every day you're running around with your tape and your glue and keeping everything together, and I know we have the regular recurring painting and different maintenance items, so thank you for keeping that all going on a daily basis.
Yeah, people.
Good teamwork.
Yeah, great teamwork, and I know being up at Mill Pond, and if I've talked to parents who've never been in that building before, and they say, "Oh, it's new. Like it looks so new in here," and then people realize, "Wait a minute, this school's been here for a while."
20-something years, I think, right?
21, 20.
It just speaks to the way that we've kept it up, the choices that were made in designing that school that didn't date it, like overly date it either. You know how school construction is dated. And it just makes something look and feel old, and that school is standing the test of time. So
And we missed you for the summer list. We saw the summer list that had been completed, and normally we were able to thank you in person, and I was like, where is Bob? And I would thank him for all the incredible,
Thank
the
you.
work that gets done over the summer is pretty amazing
Yeah, we
as
have
well.
some really good vendors that, have been working with us year in and year out, and they're very cooperative. We have great relationships with them, and sometimes you have to twist their arm to, they don't want to disappoint the town, frankly, so they want to meet the schedule, and they don't want to disappoint anybody. And this last year has been very, very challenging, as Steve can attest to, with the COVID and the shortages in materials and labor, and it's just been, for everybody, it's been a challenge. But no, I appreciate that. The recognition is nice. We'll pass that along to the vendors that we have that work with us.
Yeah, please do.
And also our crew. So we've touched upon most all of these. I think, one of the ones I want to mention probably under fiscal '24 is the parking lot expansion at Mill Pond. I mean, obviously, they're stretched for parking and they'd like to have that. Is it a safety concern? Well, maybe during functions and so forth it is. So we want to keep that in focus because, that's something that they're in desperate need of. But, does it supersede some of the other desperate needs? I don't know. That may end up down the list to 25 next year. So as we pointed out, these things are moving target depending on what's approved and how the capital plan receives our presentation and so forth and so on. So the other things I think you've pretty much seen year in and year out, we talked about the Armstrong roof. The parking lots, they're $80,000. What we're looking to do going forward with the parking lot repairs, which we have been putting on $80,000 a year. We've done a lot of repairs this past year, patching and patchwork and trying to, do what we can to maintain it without expending all of that money. But what I'd like to do going forward is rather than have the $80,000, we did discuss it in-house, rather than have the $80,000 as an ongoing preventative maintenance type figure, what we should do is kind of pick the areas in the parking lots in the schools that are in the worst condition and try and get an all-in price to fix certain sections of those schools in those parking lots and come back with hard figures maybe next year. So, but for now, we'll keep it on the radar because the parking lots, as you know, they get a lot of wear and tear. We do a lot of repairs and a lot of them really should be replaced, sooner rather than later. So that's still on there. The Gibbons Middle School Gymnasium floor replacement, if you'll remember from our discussions in the past, when the vendor comes in to do the sanding and replace, refinishing of the floors, the Gibbons floor at the gym, there's no more wood left to refinish, so you can't sand it down and pieces are lifting up, and that will become a safety concern over time. So, we need to have that on the radar, and we think we can manage until fiscal year '26, but that may end up getting moved up depending on, the wear and tear over the next couple of years. And then fiscal year '27 again is the $80,000 worth of parking. So I know you have your work cut out for you going through all this work over the weekend.
Scrolling through our.
If you have any other questions or if that's.
Thanks for that reminder. The last coat of finish went on the floor today at the Newfield School Gymnasium.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is one beautiful, beautiful room.
We're excited to have another
Gonna be a great
full-size gym
facility.
here in Westborough. Our basketball teams desperately need another place to play, so,
A lot
yeah.
of hard work, especially on Steve's behalf.
Yep.
Chairman of that building committee.
Heck no, the wood floor is on me. I just am going on record because I just want to insist that we get a wood floor. They tried to pull it from the project like 4 times and they're like, no, the superintendent
Didn't
says we're
happen,
gonna-"
it's there.
And I'm like, no, we're going to get a wood
thank you.
floor. Thank you very much. So I think
I
for
think-
now, that brings us to a really good place. We knew that it takes time to digest that, and so we've built in opportunities for you to do so. I just would seek a motion just to forward the 23 items as noted, if you feel comfortable.
So move.
I'll second.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That's 5-0. We will approve that. Thank you so much for all the details in the packet and for coming and answering our questions.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Guys, thank you very much.
And it's sort of stay tuned, right?
Right, so tomorrow they ship it across the street and then we start to
Thank you.
dig in on it.
Or we said sometimes concrete falls from.
All right, so that takes us in our agenda to an update on the Board of Health meeting, and there was a Board of Health meeting last night, and at the beginning of their meeting was also a joint meeting with the Select Board. And Amber and I had originally put this on our agenda because we were anticipating that the superintendent would be asked to come to the Board of Health meeting, and it turned out that she did not have to attend.
Yeah, so I can provide an update on a couple pieces. I think that, keeping a close relationship with the Board of Health as we move through the remainder of this year is going to be important, as you know, to maintain our practices. I think the good news is that we have established opening protocols, and, we're in Wednesday of our third week and our first full week, and, we're really moving along smoothly. And I think the board felt comfortable that there was no substantive update that they needed from us in terms of that. I do want to follow up on some health-based updates in that time slot while I've got your attention. So we had indicated that we would provide an update to you on the faculty percentages of vaccination. We were able to complete that. Students, and then just some current updates. So we have 100% participation on getting all the information from faculty. Currently, there are, down to every last working employee in the district, 740 employees that you serve. That's noon aides, that's lunch, cafeteria staff, it's custodial teams, it's secretaries, everybody, all in 740 people that we serve with our budget and our efforts. Of those 740, we have a 96.6 vaccination rate. That means 715 of our faculty are fully vaccinated. 20 people are unvaccinated, or 2.7%. 0.5% partially vaccinated, with 4 people and 1 medical exemption. You add up those numbers, as I'm sure you do, that's 740 people across district. I feel very, very good. I think we gives us one of our absolute best benchmark districts in terms of vaccination and health benchmarks. Our student vaccination rate, the high school, now I'm going to qualify this a little bit when I walk through it with you. The data that the nurses are using is to look at the SNAP data, which is the online database where medical information is housed. They have access to it as nurses. The data that is in there is good concrete data, but it doesn't always get into SNAP, in the sense that if you move in from out of town or in another state, it might not take a while to get into SNAP until you get a new provider and you have a medical checkup. Some of the vaccination sites that did mass vaccinations for different groups don't upload their data into SNAP. And then you have a lot of organizations and a lot of medical processes that do. So we have a very solid number, but I think it's probably low for where we are. It's probably higher. So Judy Noonan, the nurse leader, reported to me that currently at the high school, 87% of our students are fully or partially vaccinated in process. At the Gibbons school, 83% of all students in SNAP show as vaccinated or partially vaccinated in process, with the small percentage being in process. Those numbers of the 83 and the 87 are basically vastly vaccinated. At the 6th grade, it's about 20 students that have been vaccinated. They just haven't hit the birthday rollover. It doesn't work. Those are also incredibly good numbers, and again, probably low in the estimates. She thinks we're doing even much better than that. So I think in terms of current update and status, checking on health benchmarks for the housing of all of our students, we feel very good that things are going smoothly, that our vaccination rates are as strong as we represented them, and we feel very, very fortunate. Want to give a shout out to Pat Purcell and the fire department and police, but particularly the fire department, for providing those vaccination opportunities and really being diligent to get Westborough protected. Really, the payoff is pretty impressive. At a school level, since the start of school, there were 10 cases. I think it was like 5 faculty, 5 students. Of those 10 cases, 3 had been in school that required us to do contact tracing. So of those, the contact tracing was done, and of the contact tracing, they all opted to test and stay, and all came back negative. It's exceptionally good data for us. So, you know, since the opening of school, the test and stay model has been well received by people, utilized, and on the ground for the contact tracing that was required, worked effectively, and all came back negative. So I feel very, very confident with where we are. We will stay the course. We will wait as DESE makes other recommendations. We were clear that we won't even talk about it until after we get notation from DESE and things move forward progressively at the state and community level. And we'll bring it back here for any ongoing discussion, for any adjustments to our protocols. Should we shift or want to shift mask protocols? Should DESE, actually move to their original recommendation? So I think for now, it's important for all families and community members to know that we anticipate staying the course as we are until we get the next move kind of is really on DESE to see should they in any way indicate the desire for communities to have flexibility based on vaccination rate. Clearly our rate would merit that we end up having that discussion, but I think that there needs to be good process around that involves lots of discussion. So I just want to be reassuring to people there's no quick decision to be made here. We're going to use thoughtful process and working with all the right groups of people should we decide to even bring forward a recommendation that you would want to make to shift any practices. So I think currently I feel very good and wanted to take the Board of Health chunk of time to update you.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions about, do you have a question?
I have a question about the online data versus the data we receive from parents in their health forms. Mm-hmm. Is the vaccination part of submitting to the health records that we send into the school? In other words, I think people will wonder, can we get accurate data that isn't from SNAP?
Sure.
Right?
So great point. Currently, the vaccination of COVID is not a required, health form submission like other types of admissions around vaccinations. So the SNAP data is the best hard data of our overall vaccination rate. If we were to decide that we wanted to update any kind of mask policy, we would have to do the same kind of 100% data collection like we did with the survey data for faculty. And it takes time. I mean, so there's 4,000 students in district, and even if you're looking at half of them by looking at just the schools where they would qualify by age, we would need to do a survey and proof of vaccination in order to consider a shift in masking, most likely. But that's why I said for me it's a matter of process, and I want to be reassuring to everybody and anyone who's listening that that's a process that we would define and then set up a protocol and bring forward a plan, and it would require notation of by student in order to understand any flexibility. So it's not going to be like a random system, so it would need to have some process behind it. So right now, those numbers are just general verification of reassurance that we're well vaccinated, and it wouldn't match our needs were we to decide to do something different.
No, I appreciate that answer, just to understand what it would look like. And my other question is something that I've been asked. I think I know the answer, but I'd rather just ask, which is when you see a certain number of kids in quarantine, they're not coming from close contacts from the cases that have been in school. Those quarantine cases are coming from outside, correct? That they must have been a close contact who are quarantined from cases that are not in the school.
Right.
That's what I thought. Someone asked and said, how can that be that there are these quarantine cases if there aren't other, because we have, the reason is we have test and stay.
Right, exactly.
And it's working, and
right. And unfortunately, or fortunately, however, it is what it is, that the design of the test and stay doesn't allow us to test and stay for students if they're exposed outside of school. I think that is unfortunate, but we have to fall within compliance of what DESE said was allowable. I'm hoping that maybe that practice will shift over time. And we've seen that basically DESE evolves their practices against how much the data plays out a certain way. So, I mean, I'm sure they're going to get pressure to adjust potentially, but there's also supply shortages already. So, you know, again, I think it's the same delicate kind of tap dance of keeping all the everything kind of functioning.
Well, please thank the health team of nurses.
They're pretty amazing,
Pretty
yeah.
amazing. Really extraordinary what they've done in the last year and a half and currently. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? All right, we'll move on to the next agenda item, snow days, alternative learning days.
Talk about snow.
Hard to think about snow.
So we'll hear an update on how snow days will be handled for the 2021-2022 school year.
If the roads are not passable, we will have snow days. The Department of Education has not changed their stance despite the fact that we did virtual learning last year. So you may remember it was the June of 2020 when they put out a memo saying we're no longer allowed for virtual learning on snow days. So they have not amended that yet, although the department is under pressure. But I've been told that by some people within the district that snow days would be most welcome this year. So,
I've heard that too.
yes.
Yeah,
I think the seniors think that's a great idea.
without the snow, though.
Yeah, well, you know, I did hear there was a superintendent, I forget which state, that he would do, once a year, he would do a beach day.
I know, I'm going to be back under pressure again to, you know.
I think that's a good concept.
You're going to get your text messages.
I know,
at
I
10
will be
o'clock at
getting
night.
to. I just got a text message from Judy. I love that people watch. Judy says that when parents do give us information on their students' vaccination rate, we do add it into the totals. So it's tracked both at the school level if someone provides it, but it's not like the same 100% kind of check-in that we did. And she said the SNAP data is really our most reliable. Night, thanks, Judy.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you, Judy. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Any questions about snow days?
But Desi made it very clear 2 years ago how they felt, and I thought we
tried.
discussed that beyond what was needed, and
We will do a practice, just to, you know, remember for everyone to remember a process, you know, where that, you know, where they look when there's a snow day and how we announce it. And so we usually do a test to make sure people receive the message. So we'll probably do that as it gets into mid-November.
Yeah, we usually provide instructions.
And
to
then the
staff and
website's
students.
updated, and, yeah, I mean, I think that it works effectively, but it's always good to remind people.
Yeah.
Sorry, Andrew, it's a bummer for the seniors, I know. The pressure always comes from the seniors. I'm like, I know, I'm sorry.
No, actually, right.
Oh, yeah, because they.
They want the snow.
They want the snow day.
Oh, yeah, they want them, but
they want-
Yeah, because alternative learning, they got to do work.
Right.
they don't have to make up.
Yeah, no. So,
I mean, usually the alternate learning days do not go well. Like the general consensus, like even with teachers, they do not like it.
Everyone likes the snow day. All right. So the next thing on the agenda is to review the MASC resolutions, and the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, that's what MASC stands for, puts out a set of resolutions each year prior to their annual meeting in November. And our purpose tonight is just to look over the resolutions, and in a subsequent meeting, probably our next meeting, we can vote our approval or non-approval of the resolutions that are brought forward, and all school committees at Massachusetts will bring forward their recommendations to see if this is something that, as an organization, we want to bring forward. So we'll just review these. There are 9 resolutions this year. The first one is sponsored by the Framingham School Committee, and it is dedicated funding for school-based clinics and services. And I won't read the whole thing tonight, but it basically wants MASC to support proposals that would establish dedicated funding for school-based physical health and mental health clinics and services, meaning that obviously maintaining physical, social, and emotional wellness in students is very important, and a school is a place where they could receive that care. to decrease absentees and school discipline referrals. It actually talks about the whole community, benefiting the whole community. So that's one of the resolutions that's brought forward.
So my understanding is that it was those that would not receive services outside of school because of lack of their own financial ability, says that the school can do those services and be funded for it, so that they'd be healthier kids.
Yeah.
The kids who would not receive it, it's really I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I guess I'm giving my opinion about that. I think that's a really good thing.
That's okay. And kudos to the Framingham School Committee for bringing that forward. Resolution 2 is homework gap and Wi-Fi internet access. So this is sponsored by the MASC Board of Directors. And this is about for the MASC to actually file for and support legislation which seeks to provide free broadband internet to all K-12 students in Massachusetts. Resolution 3, IDEA Full Funding Act. And again, I've seen this one come up before.
They do it every year.
Yep. That the MASC calls upon the Massachusetts congressional delegation to reintroduce and promote the passage of the IDEA Full Funding Act. Resolution 4, recess, also sponsored by the MASC Board of Directors, that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees support legislation, and there are current bills in the Senate and House right now, calling for at least 20 minutes of uninterrupted, supervised, safe, and unstructured free play recess per day, which cannot be excluded from structured learning time requirements and may not increase the total number of hours required in the school year for Massachusetts elementary school students. Resolution 5, zero tolerance policies. And this is also sponsored by the MASC Board of Directors. Calls upon the legislature to enact or amend legislation, so there are current bills, to encourage the use of restorative, therapeutic, and educational approaches to incidents whenever possible over the use of zero tolerance policies in order to provide students the best chance to remain in the public school systems of the Commonwealth. Resolution 6, alternative to MCAS. Call upon the legislature to establish a commission to research and analyze alternative means for students to demonstrate academic achievement, which can be used to satisfy graduation requirements for individual students and accountability standards for Massachusetts public schools and school districts. And there are current bills for that already. Resolution 7, school committees and receivership. To support local initiatives and legislation to restore school committee oversight of the superintendent and/or receiver, including but not limited to goal setting, performance review, and the evaluation process. And there's some rationale here too about receivership is an equity issue, which can be seen in the types of districts that are taken into receivership. And it strips away the voices of the community, and just there's no clearly set guidelines for those measures, so calling on a change there. Resolution 8, electric school buses. Therefore be resolved that MASC petition Congress to appropriate $30 billion for improving the electrical supply infrastructure and providing electric buses and charging stations. And Resolution 9, prohibiting the use of Native American mascots. Therefore, it be resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees support legislation calling for regulations prohibiting public schools from using an athletic team name, logo, or mascot, which names, refers to, represents, or is associated with Native Americans, including aspects of Native American cultures and specific Native American tribes. So another set of relevant and sort of wide-ranging resolutions across the student's experience in school. Any thoughts or anything to share at this time?
No, but I think it was Resolution 7, specifically would empower the school committees to maintain control over their systems and not be mandated by the state to receivership.
Yeah, sort of called takeover by the,
Yeah.
by the state.
Which is interesting, because that's the way the law was written originally. And then it changed in 1993, where in fact, many things changed, including the powers of the school committee and the ability of towns to do certain things relative to schools. And it was, in effect, brought to the legislature, the power of the legislature to do many of the things that the towns were empowered to do. Generally, I think this year's resolutions are closer to middle-of-the-road needs of the state and the school committees and school districts, whereas in past years, there've been some fairly extreme requests of the legislature.
And I think too, if you look at who's sponsoring the resolution, only one was outside of the MASC Board of Directors, which is the Framingham School Committee. Sometimes you can see that it's sponsored by a group with an agenda or a mission or, something that, that they would like to see specifically. But this seems, like you said, to kind of cover most districts and kind of, I find them to be very student-centered.
Yes.
This year. Yeah.
Right. On Resolution 1, dedicated funding for physical and mental health.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very broad-based, I think. There's, how much funding, who gets to see what, and, what kind of services are we going to provide? Who's
Right.
gonna, because it could go any which way.
Yep. Yeah.
Seems like it could turn into an unfunded mandate very quickly.
It's very, very, I don't know.
Well, one of the things that happens with these is that, once the idea gets out there, some benefit of this. In other words, if you focus on what its purpose was, not so much how it gets done, but it creates a focus that eventually something does come of it that's beneficial.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
I think,
That's true.
it's also bringing that issue to the forefront. So
Yes.
thinking about, we have communities in Massachusetts that really could benefit from having like specific mental health clinics where they're providing service during the school day or after school hours. And I've seen in other states where they have clinics in their schools and they're open into the evenings and families can access them. And so I think it's important to bring something up like that, just to bring awareness to it. They do ask for dedicated funding, but again, that's very vague and how that would play out. But, yeah,
That's very true.
it's good to,
Bringing it into limelight is that's the,
yep. And same
goal.
thing,
It's
with
very good.
Resolution 2, the homework gap. I definitely support Wi-Fi and internet access for all K-12 students and have that actually, I would like that to be like something that is provided free for all families. But I don't want it provided just so kids can do their homework. I don't think that that's like the main purpose of it. But anyway, that's how it's phrased here, to kind of just provide that equal access for students to do their work at home.
It may actually be an anachronism because finally the government funded the internet system for Western Massachusetts, which had been, well, for many towns, like the town of Rowe, it doesn't have a police department, doesn't have anything, and the kids out there probably are lucky to be able to use a telephone for internet. But so this may be a different focus when it finally gets hammered down, I guess, to what the legislature may do with it.
So we'll have time to think about these, just to kind of a quick look at them, and at our next meeting, or the meeting after that, at some meeting before the annual meeting in November, we will vote our support of the ones that we think are important to bring forward. And thank you. And one of the last things we have on our agenda is a discussion of school committee goals and retreat planning. So we are planning a retreat for October 4th. It will be off-site at the Assabet Valley Collaborative at their building that they have there. And the goals for our retreat are to continue to build strong working relationships with each other, and engage in both short and long-range student-focused goal setting and planning for the district. So since October 4th is a Monday, it's not an ideal time to be heading off-site to meet together, so we'll have a little bit of a later start time so that the rest of us can start our actual regular work days, so Amber and Daniel can have a chance, and Dave can have a chance to catch up on anything that came through on the weekend, but we will meet from 10:30 to 4:30. And we're going to have lunch delivered on site to maximize our time together and so that we can stay in our own little COVID bubble for the day. And I know AVC has, because of COVID, reduced the amount of catering and things that they have. So since we're not getting there till 10:30, we'll just bring our own like waters and snacks. I'm sure Sarah can help me plan a nice snack treats for everybody. And we will be wearing masks in and out of the building, but they said if we're meeting and we're spaced out in the room, that room, if I remember correctly, is quite large, like this, we can be spread out, that we wouldn't have to wear masks if we didn't want to. So some of the items I have on a draft agenda include doing some team building, looking at the capital expenditures planning, and looking at that long-range planning that we got a sneak peek at tonight. Looking at next steps with district inclusion and equity work, looking at the town master plan and thinking about the goals for that because that is nearing its like completion. So thinking about the town master plan goals, looking at the climate action plan, looking at our draft of the strategic plan, and then thinking forward from there. And then we'll also be setting our own school committee goals for the year. And so as part of our preparation for that, Raghu, I would love it if at our retreat you were able to share those pieces of that climate action plan that will impact the schools. Like when you think about like what are the first steps, I know it's like very, very detailed, but thinking about those implications for the schools, so like budget planning and things like that, we can stay on top of it because I know it's very specific to how these initiatives will roll forward. So.
Happy to.
That would be great, thank you.
Got homework.
He's got some homework. So that's what I had on the agenda. And if other people have items they'd like to see on the agenda for the retreat, you can let me know. And our school committee goals are included in the packet for tonight, and they're on our website, so you can take a look at those and just think about what do we want to keep, what are we still working on, and what are some new goals we might set for ourselves.
Did you mention town meeting warrant articles?
Town meeting warrant articles, yeah, we can talk about those too, although those are already going to be forwarded.
They're already submitted, but I think talking about the presentation, we have the two.
Talk about the presentations.
Right, but I think
I'm talking about the whole thing.
The whole warrant.
Yeah, issues on the warrant.
Issues on the warrant, yeah.
We
I'll put
certainly
that on the
can,
agenda. Yeah. So if you're thinking about this and have other things you want to add to the agenda, you can let me know. All right, so the next meeting of the school committee will be on Wednesday, October 6th. Motion to adjourn.
So move.
Steve, second.
Second.
Thank you, Lisa. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. This meeting is adjourned.